strange, and it was just every week I was just amazed, just more and more amazed that I got to be a part of something like that, and how much I learned from it and how much I gained from giving in that way to another person. Something so simple. We're not sitting around trying to solve each other's problems. There's no answers being offered. There's nobody going, oh gosh, well, here's what I would do. And here's the 5 steps that'll get you out of this situation. It's nothing like that. It's so simple. It's just, wow, when you shared that part of your story, I was so happy for you. I was so excited. And then when your parents didn't respond, oh, my heart just sank for you. And I mean, just to have somebody else recognize that has just blown my world wide open. And so what I want to do is, bring that to even in an in-person, experience where we can do that face to face. I mean, I just started to see, like, we don't do this enough. We don't do this near enough.
You're calling that a confessional community?
Mm-hmm.
And the format, it's very interesting. 8, by the way, is the number of new beginnings.
Mm.
Uh, and so you're pulling 8 people together each week. Someone has 20 uninterrupted minutes to talk about
Yes.
anything they want to talk about.
Yes.
And then following that,
And
10
then there's a
minutes
10-minute window, where the other 7 people speak and say, this is how I felt. They're mainly focusing on how they felt. It may be, even a sensation in their body. It may not always be, I felt sad or happy, but it may just be like, I felt knots in my stomach, when you shared blah, blah, blah. And then it goes back to the original storyteller, and they have another 10 minutes to sort of process through what they just heard. And then it goes back to the group, and then they have another 10 minutes to share, again, what the speaker just, the storyteller just shared, to reflect back on that again.
Wendy,
It's
you
so
started your
beautiful.
story. You started your story talking about you were in more fear than you thought. It sounds like that this group is a place where the fear that you had overcome allowed you to be vulnerable. I mean, I think we really want intimacy, as you stated, to be known, to know and to be known, but we're then afraid too that, to a degree, well, what if they really know who I am? Would
Yeah.
they would they
Right.
still like me? Would they still, can I truly share who I am?
Mm.
And I know from in my own journey, failures have been awakening moments for me. Failures of different kind. I mean, I went bankrupt in 2009, 2010. And I lost a child. I lost a grandchild. In these moments, I mean, you bottle up all of this, and then to be able to get with people that you have come to trust and share yourself, to know that I've shared things on some of our Zoom calls about myself personally, and then someone will call me up and say, well, I went back and thought through, what we had discussed that day and what you shared, and and the responses, like you're talking about, just even one-on-one with someone to and as they tell you back what you said, that's been really significant to me to feel love, because someone took the time and the interest to listen, and then to share. And I don't know, is that kind of what you're describing? Has the group grown more vulnerable as the months progressed through the spring, as people got more and more comfortable with one another?
Yeah, it definitely has. I mean, we definitely have grown more vulnerable with each other. There's the interesting thing about doing it online is like these ladies are, before this group, or complete strangers to me. So
Hmm.
there's a safety that I can share things with them, and then I'm not going to run into them at the grocery store this week. They're not in, they're not a part of my church or the PTA or whatever. I'm not going to run into them. And so there's no fear that they're going to run and tell somebody what you should hear, what she shared, and or what she's going through, or, oh, we need to pray for her, how those prayer requests can be sometimes. But
Gossip.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Um, but I don't know. I don't know if they're all of the confessional communities are like this. I just know the one group that I've experienced, and it is an amazing group of women. And I just feel like I've struck gold with them, because they're all so thoughtful, so insightful, so compassionate, um, each in their own way. But yes, we have gone to some deep places and quickly. I mean, we spent probably about 4 weeks just talking and getting to know each other on the call before we started this storytelling liturgy, where there was this definite pattern with the 20 minutes and the 10 and the back and forth. We were kind of practicing it, but it was just in a get to know you kind of way. We weren't going real deep. It was just like, oh, this is my life. I'm, married. I have a couple of kids. This is what I'm involved in, or this is my career, or whatever, just kind of basic things. But when we started the storytelling, I was pretty amazed how deep we went, and very quickly. Just some of the things that they were sharing was just mind blowing, but just some of their experiences and all, and what they had come through. But I learned not just about them, I learned so much about me, and just hearing them share their stories. Um, I, and sometimes it's even hard to explain it and put it into words. Like, I don't know why it works. I just know it works. Like, I just know that there's just something happening in that, some dynamic that's going on there that I can't even fully explain well, but it's
You know,
amazing.
Richard Rohr, I remember early on when I was listening to him, he really, he really helped me. He had, one of his books is Falling Upwards, and it really helped me to redefine events that had happened in my life, since real significant change often happened after real difficult times and events that happened to me. And he was the first person I ever heard describe it. God is God all vulnerable.
Mm.
And I had always struggled with the idea of God being all powerful. I grew up in a church that was an emphasis, that God knew everything and he had all power. So whatever he wanted, whatever he knew, he would make happen. And that was not a God that I trusted. I didn't connect at all with that God in my upbringing. Um, I was a fairly well an atheist as I got into high school and early days in college, because there was no trust in a God that I had no idea how he would respond, what he would do. And so later, when after a season of being in a really highly performance oriented environment, I began to be exposed to people like Baxter Kruger and Richard Rohr and Ronald Rollhauser, another Catholic guy, and just different voices that were coming in describing a God that was different. And rather than being centered around sin, as you're talking a confessional group, you're centered around pain, sorrow, grief, loss, life, love. I mean, I think we've lost contact with a lot of the emotions that that are the feelings that are around us every day, and we don't have a place to be able to express them. We don't feel like we have ears that would hear, and so it sounds like a group I would like to be a part of, something I would like to, I feel like in some degree, the three of us are a part of probably a half a dozen or more others that have been together, walking together for almost a year now. And we experience some of these moments, not in a directed way like what you're talking about here, but still at different points, people have become vulnerable in the group and shared, things, and I think we've all been enriched as we felt a stronger connection. And the image of God as all vulnerable has probably done a lot to break down some of the false ideas I had about intimacy with God, trust of God. Trust comes through experience. You walk with someone, and if they tell you they're going to do something, you trust is that you've walked with them enough that you know that they will. It's not something you conjure up in the hope that they'll do it, which is a lot of the Christian faith story. Is you're supposed to just sort of make this assumption and then somehow or another place this trust on a person that you don't know or don't understand or doesn't know or doesn't understand you. And now we're really talking about somebody that we get to know. In your case, it's other people. In the case of God, we're talking about our Creator and being able to say, well, even when these difficult things happen, that God is going to make something good out of this difficulty. He's going to be with me in the difficulty, and that was a whole different way to approach life and church and relationship and religion from anything that I knew in the first half of my life. And so, like you, it's been a slow process of dealing with. I've always had a fear of being known. I've always hidden, and I've said this in our group one time. About 30 years ago, a missionary guy came in. He was struggling. He and his wife and family were in Spain, and he defined for me what spiritual health was. And he said it's when the outside person and the inside person are the same person. And at the time he said that, the inside person and the outside person for me were not the same, not at all, not hardly at all. But it awakened me to the idea that that was possible, to be integrated, to be a whole person, and to be able to have successes and have failures, and for them not to define me one way or the other, for it just to be part of the journey, and to be able to share them with other people was, only a little bit at first and in small doses, but but it was a change that changed everything.
Yeah,
I've never
those
heard
have
of a
been some
group
of my
like
favorite moments.
I've never heard of a group like this.
Yeah.
And I've been around, and I guess I was involved in some small groups with men. Maybe it was a little bit, but it lacked that discipline, and it and I'm not a big fan of the word discipline, but there is a very creative structure that you have there that I've just not encountered before,
Mhm.
of literally saying to somebody, we want to hear you.
Yeah.
We as a group, there are 8 of us here, 7 of us, which by the way is the number of completion. The numbers here are really cool.
Mm.
A complete number of people want to hear you.
Yeah.
And then we're going to tell you what we heard you say.
So
And
that
then
you know we heard you.
yeah, yeah. And how each one of us have heard you differently.
Yeah.
Jesus picked 12 really different guys.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Well, and it even goes back, I know we talked about this fairly recently on a call about the withness of God.
yeah.
And so even when you're sharing your story or you're hearing someone else share theirs, like they're reliving it in that moment, and you can be with them in that
Wow.
moment as they are reliving their story, and you're getting to watch it and experience it with them, and then share with them how you experienced their story. It
You know, since you coined that
my
phrase, by the
words.
way, you're the one that coined witness.
Yeah.
And in the BIV, I'm now saying, and you will be witnesses to me
Mm-hmm.
in Judea and Samaria and the uttermost, in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the uttermost parts of the world. That that is so powerful because it just removes all the barriers.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, another phrase for barrier is stumbling block.
Mm.
Uh, you really have something here, and I'm thinking, I'm thinking. By the way, if you think it's powerful now, why don't you and 700 other women from your own community?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it'll escalate to that, won't it?
Yeah. That's what I
Because
want to see.
because it's because it's truth.
Mm-hmm.
It's a whole bunch of people coming together, looking for and telling the truth.
Yeah.
I don't know about a lot. I've read the back of the book, man. Truth wins. I read the last
Always.
page, and I'll guarantee you, truth wins. And so, yeah, my heavens, that's powerful. So you start with not just sticking your toe in, but maybe going in waist deep to one of the great outpourings of the '90s. I mean, certainly Brownsville and Toronto were the two phenomenals. I was at
Yeah.
Toronto, but I was never at Brownsville. And that seed grows, and it grows into an understanding of intimacy that you start hearing through podcasts, through different ministry. And that puts you in a position of ministry to the women in your church. And that then sparks you ministering to women all over. I mean, on a Zoom call, they can be anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
What, where do you think that's going to go next? I mean, think about this transition in the last 28 years.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
4 sevens, by the way. I'm sorry, I'm not some numerologist. 4 sevens is 28, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
And 5 sevens would be 35, and
Mm.
5's the number of grace.
You know, Wendy, when you were talking earlier, one of the things Christianity for probably all three of us was going somewhere. And in relationship, there's nowhere to go. You can't arrive at relationship. You know, there's not a limit. It's limitless. And so you've moved from something where you were trying to attain something somewhere, you know, like heaven or being saved or whatever, you know, and so now you're looking at an eternal journey, one that won't even be completed in when you die. You'll move on into the relationship in a new way. George MacDonald talks about death as just changing out of our night clothes into our day clothes. And that it's just a change of form, not a change of being. And so relationship is something that doesn't have a limit. And so what you're describing can go, you know, can mutate and morph and change and develop and, you know, and still be relationship. You know, it doesn't become anything else ever.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's one of the things that has been liberating to me in this journey is, you know, now I'm in a conversation that never ends. And I'm a part of something that never ceases. And so, you know, I've got all the time that I need to move from where I am to where I want to be. And that's really liberating. That changes everything.
Yeah.
There are sisters that are going to hear this. And we had a recording glitch, by the way, but there are sisters that are going to hear this. What would you say to the sisters? I mean, I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to shut up because I want to hear what you have to say, but I'm going to tell you you're a pioneer here. And what would you tell the sisters that are going to hear this? What would you encourage them to do? What insights would you give them that Dale and I can't give them because we haven't got the gift of your gender?
One of the first things I would say, Dale, when you talked about we wrestle with this fear of being known, because really I think it's a fear of being exposed, but that also butts up against with the fear of never being known and never truly being known, and pushing past that that awkwardness, that uncomfortableness, and taking that risk into relationship and connection, true connection. I would just say it's worth it. It is, yeah, I get it. It's scary, but it's so worth it. Let me just take my word for it. On the other side, it is worth it. And even it's one thing I've learned about connection in these last few years. We tend to shy away from confrontation when differences arise. Somehow we're surprised. We're surprised that they present themselves, and we often just don't know what to do with confrontation, and pushing through for the purpose of connection. It strengthens the connection like never before. I mean, when I think about the people who are closest to me, who are dearest to me, they're people that I have walked through some real difficulty with. It's we're not close because everything's always been smooth and easy. We have a close connection because we've been through hard stuff and we've come out stronger on the other side. And so it's worth it. It's worth it to share that part of your heart. It's worth it to reveal it to somebody else. I believe it's the heart of the Father. I believe that you know, uh, I'm gonna blank on the scripture, but there's connection between knowing and loving. You can't separate the two. You can't look at someone honestly and say, "Oh, I love you so much, but I don't really want to know you." And you can't really look at somebody and go, "I know you so well, but I don't really love you." Like that, that's heartbreaking. Like the two are intertwined. And so when I hear, John 17:3, that this is eternal life, that we know the Father and his son Jesus, that that's what life is, to know him. And it doesn't stop there, but to know one another. And I guess it's what, First John, where he talks about, uh, again, it's that connection between knowing and loving. You again, uh, it's escaping me right now, the exact wording, but um, this is how you know that someone knows God, is that they love God. They love God, and there's a knowing. You can't separate those two things. And it's worth it to know someone, to get to know someone, and to allow them to get to know you. One of my favorite Psalms is 139, because it starts out, David is talking about, "God, you know me, you know when I was being knit in my mother's womb, you know where I am at all times. If I'm up to the highest heights, if I'm in the deepest depths, you know me, you know me, you know me." Like he says it 1,000 different ways. And then at the end of the psalm, he comes back and says, "Search me and know me." And it sounds so weird at first, because you're like, "David, you just spent all this time telling us how well God knows you, but now you're ending the song with 'search me and know me.' What are you saying there?" And I think there's that aspect of knowing where both people have to participate in the knowing. I
Mm.
can know a lot about you. I can study you. I can look at you on the outside. I can research you and, get all this background information. I can go and interview people who know you. And so I can get to know you from all these different exterior angles. But to know you on the inside, you've got to crack your chest open and show me who you are. And I think that's what David is saying is, "I'm going to crack my chest open, God, and show you who I am. Search me out." He's giving God permission to do that. And I just think that's the cry of the Lord's heart, is to know us that way. And he wants to do the same with us. It's not one-sided, it's always you. This is the other thing I say about, intimacy. You can't have two people come together and only one of them say that they were intimate. If both people were not participating in the intimacy, it never happened. And I mean, that's on a physical level, an emotional level, a spiritual level, however you want to put it, whatever way. But um,
Hmm.
intimacy requires that two people are fully participating, or else intimacy never happened.
Hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
And that's the question, y'all have heard me say this before, but my question at 40 was, if I was going to get to know who God was, I'd have to know who he was before time, before Genesis 1:1. And so when I've spent the last 30 years asking those questions, looking for those answers, listening for voices that would speak to those things. And I came back to the irreducible truth, as I call it, that that relationship is that foundation. The Father, Son, and Spirit never had a time where they were not in relationship with one another. That was what made love possible. It was what made life possible. Communion, fellowship, all of that flowed from relationship. And so they created in order to have fellowship with a creation that was enough like them as a creation could be, so that we could enter into that fellowship, communion, and life. And so the relational part, I made this statement, it's a little hard, but like you said, if both people say yes, then we call it making love. If one person says no, we call it rape.
Mm.
And so God's not in a position to force himself or us into anything. It's always by consent, as he seeks us out and we seek him out. And he can go all the way up to a certain point, and then he can go no further, or there is no relationship any longer. If there's any point in the future where God zaps me to make me good in an area that I'm not good, I'm no longer Dale. I have no one to offer him. I'm now part robot, part human. I'm no longer me. And so the diversity and of being in union, but being diverse is a thing that has to be kept in tension all the time.
Mm.
And both in our human relationships and our divine relationship. So there's this place in which everyone needs to say yes. And that takes a lot on our part. I don't believe that's terribly difficult for them. As the creator, to say yes to their creation, but it is, even though I think we've been told that's what that they couldn't say yes to us. They had this problem or that problem, or they couldn't be with anyone who was in sin. I mean, this stuff falls apart when you read Jesus's walk through life. As Bob says, not the Last Supper, but the First Supper was with the prostitutes and the tax collectors and the sinners. And the religious were upset that Jesus would go in there because God couldn't do that. But yet that's exactly what God did. And he's still doing it. And so it's us that have to come to a place to see him and know him as that vulnerable God, the God that could go into that room with the worst of the worst, if you want to say it that way, and love on them and fellowship with them, and then when we then see that and say yes, then we enter into this relationship. We enter into this exchange of love, the giving and the taking and the sharing and communion. All of these things become possible. And I mean, that's just so you began with getting rid of fear, but you end in experiencing love.
Yeah.
There's a ministry here that I've never really heard of, and it's yours. And each one of those women are going to see the value of this. And all of a sudden, instead of having 8, you're going to have 8 8s. That's 64. I mean, it gets big in a hurry. I'll do anything I can to help you make that happen. By the way, I don't know what it would be, but that's so real, and it's like tapping a resource. It's like finding an oil well in your backyard.
Mm.
To have the sisters come forward. It's you've heard me say before. I mean, first person to know Jesus is going to be born was a woman. That's Mary, who, by the way, when men were in awe and scared to death, said, "Let it be unto me according to your word." And then she goes to Aunt Elizabeth, by the way, our cousin Elizabeth, knowing that if they find out, if the religious leaders find out that she's pregnant and she's not married yet, they'll kill her. I mean, she was under a sentence of death if they'd found out. She goes to cousin Elizabeth, who, by the way, was too old to have a child. And when the when her husband was in the inner sanctum, and the angel of the Lord said, "By the way, your Elizabeth's going to have a baby," he scorned it so much that he was kept from being able to speak until that baby was born. But here she's pregnant with this impossible baby, and when little Mary comes and says, "This has happened," that baby jumps in the womb. I mean, I've had my hand on Flo's tummy and felt a kick, but I can't imagine a jump in the womb. That had to be really something, right? And it was because filled with the Holy Spirit in the womb.
Yeah.
And then all these things happen, and Mary hides them in her heart. She sees all these miraculous things, like the church doesn't know that this is happening, but some astrologers from a far off land know it. And angels appear to a bunch of shepherds. And Mary's storing all this, or she's seeing all this stuff, and she's storing it up because she knows what's happening. Nobody else has the full picture here. You need to understand that. Nobody else has got the full picture. And then at the marriage of Cana, she says, "You know what, boy? I'm going to out you. I'm going to push you out just like I did 30 years ago in a barn." And then that beautiful Samaritan woman. She, by the way, is sainted in the Orthodox Church, Saint Fotina, Sister of Light, she's called.
Mm.
And it's pretty well understood that she managed to minister to Nero's daughter.
Mm.
She got all the way to the inner sanctum in Rome with the gospel.
Wow.
And the three sisters that were, the compassion within them, the love within them, that couldn't be denied by a fire like Peter did, and couldn't be hidden in a room because everybody was scared. No, they stepped out. By the way, Mary was right. It was the gardener. You know, the word says she thought he was the guy. It was the gardener, man. It's the same gardener that was with Adam and Eve in the first garden.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. You're an example and an inspiration, sister.
Oh, thank you very
And
much.
you need to be heard. And I'm going to tell you, you're going to be heard. Don't be surprised that you're going to be heard, because your light's too bright. It's already it's already shining through anything that anybody would try to put over it. Okay.
I hear you. I hear you.
Anything else you want to say?
Oh, um, gosh. He he's just good. He's God is so amazing. Um, I, there's just no other way to be. There's no other way to do this. Um, I, I see. It was 20. Well, so I told you I've been in this women's ministry leadership position for about 5 years.
Mhm.
A year before I was put in that place, in that role, you had mentioned that I had a background in dance and performance. So I was teaching dance at our local college, a job I loved, people I loved working with. I got to, work with college students and others in the community and create art. And oh, it was beautiful. I loved it. I just was having the time of my life in another career that I didn't even know that I wanted until the Lord gave it to me. Um, and I had been so early 2018. I'm feeling these little nudges from the Holy Spirit of, you're not going to do this forever. And I was like, yeah, I know, and it wasn't in a way of like, you're getting a little up there. You're not going to be able to dance and maintain this forever. That wasn't the spirit of it. But it was just like, you're not going to do this forever. And I was like, yeah, I know. And I would just kind of tuck that little thought away. And just, another month or so would go by, and that little nudge would come to mind. And I was leaving, I was actually had been at a women's Bible study at our church. I think I was leading it at the time, even though I wasn't the head of the ministry anyway. But I was leaving, the Bible study was over, and I remember vividly because I'm pulling out of the parking lot, and it was such a strong sense from the Lord of like, now is the time. Now is the time to leave this job. And I was like, whew, like, okay, I'm all in. I'll do whatever. I don't know why. I don't know why the time is now, but I'll do whatever you're asking of me. I just ask for confirmation. Just confirm it for me. And I mean, within a week, I had confirmation, because the some things were happening that was going to take my job in sort of a different direction, which 5 years before I would have jumped at the chance. It would have been what I'd wanted. But at that particular season, I was looking, going, this is not what I want. This is not what I want. And so it was just confirmation that it was time for me to leave. And I left under the best of terms, and just appreciate the time that I had there. But about, I don't know, maybe 6 months after I said yes to the Lord, when people would ask me like, why are you, why are you leaving this job? What are you going to do? Like, what are you going to do? And I was like, I don't know. I just know that there is something over the horizon, and I've got to see what it is. I don't know what it is, but I know there's something there waiting for me, and I'm excited about it. And a few months later, like I said, maybe 6 months later, I woke up one morning and having had the most vivid dream that I've ever had in my life, where I started at the end of a hallway, and I would walk, and there was just this gray, like dingy, like screen, except for one little hole in the corner, in like the top left corner of the screen, where it was like blue sky, gorgeous blue sky. And I would reach into that hole and just rip the screen, and this beautiful landscape would be in front of me with just these vivid, amazing colors. And I like, what is this? And I mean, and I would experience some time in that environment of this beautiful landscape, and then it was like I would be zapped to the end of that hallway again, and it repeated about 3 or 4 times. And every time with the gray screen and me, like each time I would get more and more excited, where then I was running down the hallway, can't wait to rip that hole in that screen and reveal what is behind it. um and again, that was 5, 6 years ago, and I feel like I'm just beginning to see
Hmm.
that dream come true. I'm just beginning to see what's on the other side of that horizon. Um, so I just say that as an encouragement to anyone when you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know the next step. I don't, you know, in some ways, none of us do. So take heart that we're all in this together. I just know it's good, and I know He's with me every step of the way, and it's exciting. You know, everything with the Holy Spirit is exciting, and every part, every step of the journey along the way is just to shape you and mold you and prepare you for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. But don't rush it. Like enjoy the moment, enjoy where you are, the stage that you're in, and know that we're just going from glory to glory. It's just going to get better from here. It's just going to get richer. It's just going to get more beautiful and more glorious. So
Would you agree with Sister Mary? Let it be unto me according to your word.
yeah.
Yeah. Anything else we need to talk about?
That's good.
This is good. Can you guys stick for a minute?
Sure.
Yeah, this is rich. This has been our interview with Wendy Justice. Brothers, I know you'll gain from it, but sisters, hear this sister. Hear what she says. More importantly, follow what she does. Get to know her. She'll get to know you.
Thank you,
And
Bob.
the possibilities are endless.
For sure.
Yes.
Yeah.